Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories. We have stories that should thrill you a little and chill you a little.
It's amazing.
What you'll hear are adventures sent in by you guys, classic stories from the pulp mags, and episodes from the golden age of radio. We have special segments like Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
That's amazing.
And Paranormal Expeditions.
I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
So settle in for the next hour and enjoy the show. One more thing. You just might want to prepare yourself to be taken away from today.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by Ultrabad Storytelling. Thomas C. Foster once said, "If a story is no good, being based on Hamlet won't save it." How does this relate to our mystery? I think once you've heard it, you'll get it.
Doctor, folks, one side.
Doctor, I'm Mike Patterson. It's my father. Is he all right?
We'll see, Mike. Where's the car?
Just kept going after he got hit. He's all right, isn't he?
I'm afraid not, Mike. Your father is dead.
But, Mr. Floyd, how can the insurance company be so heartless?
Now, don't get me wrong, Mr. Patterson. You'll get the money in time, just as soon as I've heard the story from you and Dr. Warren.
And time is not good enough. I don't even have money to bury him decently.
I'll be frank with you, Patterson. That's one of the reasons I've been asked to investigate this.
You don't mean to say
Now,
that...
don't get upset. Just tell me the story as it happened. You'll probably get the money tonight. Let's begin with you, Dr. Warren.
Well, there's nothing much I can tell you, Mr.
Please,
Floyd.
Doctor, whatever you can.
Mike's father was a man of about 65. His left leg was missing.
That happened in a railroad crash. It was years ago.
He seems to have used a single crutch to help him, judging from the callus on his hand.
Is that correct, Mike?
Yes, practically all the time.
Where did the automobile hit him, Dr. Warren?
Mainly on the right side, from the look of things. That's where the worst damage was done.
All right. Mr. Patterson, suppose you tell me what you know about it.
Well, we were walking north, facing the traffic on the highway.
And the car that hit him was going south.
That's right. I particularly noticed the license plate as it approached. It was a Florida car, maybe heading home.
What make?
I don't know, but it was from Florida. I was helping my dad along, as I always did when he walked on the highway. And this car came along at a terrific speed and swerved towards us. I tried to pull my father off the road, but he couldn't move fast enough. The car hit him with a sickening thud and jerked him away from me. That's all I can tell you.
Well, I've got the whole story now, I think, from my report. I want to thank you, both of you. This will facilitate action.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I suppose that means that I can get the money soon.
Not exactly. That means that you'll go to the electric chair for the murder of your father.
Why did Mr. Floyd charge Mike Patterson with murder? See if you can find the two flaws in his story. In a moment, you'll hear Mr. Floyd explain. But first...
Oh, I know this one. The butler did it.
Ron, there was no butler in this one. You have lost your ever-loving mind.
Actually, I could be right because they gave us nothing and then said that there were 2 points that we should have caught. Did you get them?
Well, actually, no I didn't.
See?
But the truth is the story was so bad that I lost interest halfway through.
Now that is some solid detective work.
And now, let's see if your observation is as keen as Mr. Floyd's.
Let me go, I tell you. You can't prove a thing.
Mr. Floyd, why did you accuse Mike of murdering his father? Was it simply because he's beneficiary?
No, Doctor. There are 2 things wrong with this story. First, he said his father was hit by a car with Florida license plates in front. Florida hasn't had front license plates in years. But more important, Mike said he was helping his father. Now, if a man's left leg is off, he uses a crutch on that side and is helped on the right side. And if they were facing traffic, Mike would have been on the inside and would have been hit by the car. We suspected what happened when we saw blood on Mike's own car, but now we know.
Come on now. Florida plates, complicated visual explanations, and blood on the car? All things that they might have mentioned in the story.
Wow, yeah, that is some really bad storytelling.
Which is why this 5-minute mystery was brought to you by Bad Storytelling. Please don't become a statistic.
So true, so very true.
It's that you said.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. First, let me say that if you missed the 500th episode of the show, I highly recommend giving it a listen. We had so much fun putting that one together. On today's show, we have a pretty odd collection of stories that range from strange music that has no source, to a haunting train whistle, and then to a presence that really likes its pink shed. Our featured story comes from the OTR series, Lights Out. Now, I'll bet you think that this one is going to be horror. You would be wrong. It is a science fiction classic titled Rocket Ship. How about that? So let's get this all going with this from Audible. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. They have over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, computer, Kindle. Whatever you have, you can listen to Audible on it. So what am I listening to? Riders of the Purple Sage by Zane Grey and narrated by Mark Bramall. This book was suggested to us by my brother. Thank you, Jim. Do you like a really good Western? I mean, one with all the good classic stuff? I think most of us would answer yes to that. This book just might be the best Western I have ever listened to. But few have heard the whole story. For the first time in a century, Zane Grey's best-selling novel is presented in its original form exactly as he wrote it. In the early 1900s, Zane Grey took his manuscript to 2 publishing companies. They rejected it because of the theme of Mormon polygamy. Their fear is that it would offend their readers and subscribers. Grey made a special plea to Frederick Dunica, who was vice president of Harper Brothers and was Mark Twain's personal editor. Dunica and his wife read the novel and liked it, but also feared that it would offend some readers. Harper Brothers agreed to publish a changed version of the novel and purchased both the book and the magazine's serial rights. Given the task of executing the necessary editorial changes, a senior editor of the company made changes in tone, diction, and style, as well as content. The novel first appeared in 19 installments in the monthly magazine Field and Stream from January of 1912 to July of 1913. So what happened to the original manuscript? Well, it has been restored to its original glory as written by Zane Grey himself. Riders of the Purple Sage is a story about 3 main characters, Bern Venters, Jane Witherstein, and Jim Lassiter, the latter being a feared gunfighter. All 3 struggle with persecution from the local Mormon community led by Bishop Dyer and Elder Toll. The story takes place in the fictional town of Cottonwoods, Utah. It is full of fistfights, gunfights, cattle rustling, and much, much more. Here's a clip from the beginning of the novel.
A sharp clip-clop of iron-shod hoofs deadened and died away, and clouds of yellow dust drifted from under the cottonwoods out over the sage. Jane Withersteen gazed down the wide purple slope with dreamy and troubled eyes. A rider had just left her, and it was his message that held her thoughtful and almost sad, awaiting the churchmen who were coming to resent and attack her right to befriend a Gentile. She wondered if the unrest and strife that had lately come to the little village of Cottonwoods was to involve her. Then she sighed, remembering that her father had founded this remotest border settlement of southern Utah, and that he had left it to her. She owned all the ground and many of the cottages. Withersteen House was here, and the great ranch with its thousands of cattle and the swiftest horses of the sage. To her belonged Amber Spring, the water that gave verdure and beauty to the village and made living possible on that wild, purple upland waste. She could not escape being involved by whatever befell Cottonwoods. That year, 1871, had marked a change that had been gradually coming in the lives of the peace-loving Mormons of the border. Glaze, Stonebridge, Sterling, villages to the north, had risen against the invasion of Gentile settlers and the forays of rustlers. There had been opposition to the one and fighting with the other, and now Cottonwoods had begun to wake and better itself and grow hard. Jane prayed that the tranquility and sweetness of her life would not be permanently disrupted. She meant to do so much more for her people than she had done. She wanted the sleepy, quiet, pastoral days to last always. Trouble between the Mormons and Gentiles of the community would make her unhappy. She was Mormon-born, and she was a friend to poor and unfortunate Gentiles. She wished only to go on doing good and being happy, and she thought of what that great ranch meant to her. She loved it all, the grove of cottonwoods, the old stone house, the amber-tinted water, and the droves of shaggy, dusty horses and mustangs, the sleek, clean-limbed, blooded racers, and the browsing herds of cattle, and the lean, sun-bronzed riders of the sage. While she waited there, she forgot the prospect of untoward change. The bray of a lazy horse broke the afternoon quiet, and it was comfortingly suggestive of the drowsy farmyard and the open corrals and the green alfalfa fields. The rapid beat of hoofs recalled Jane Withersteen to the question at hand. A group of riders cantered up the lane, dismounted, and threw their bridles. They were 7 in number, and Tull, the leader, a tall, dark man, was an elder of Jane's church. "Did you get my message?" he asked curtly. "Yes," replied Jane. "I sent word I'd give that rider Venters half an hour to come down to the village. He didn't come." "He knows nothing of it," said Jane. "I didn't tell him. I've been waiting here for you." "Where is Venters?" "I left him in the courtyard." "Here, Jerry," called Tull, turning to his men. "Take the gang and fetch Venters out here if you have to rope him."
Audible presents the original, uncensored, unabridged novel, Riders of the Purple Sage, and you can have this book today. Here's what Audible has set up for us. They are offering a free audiobook and 30 days to give you the opportunity to check out their service. This includes free access to the Audible Plus catalog, which is updated monthly with new titles. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories, and you can get Riders of the Purple Sage today. Thank you, Audible. And now, it's time for your stories.
These are your stories, sent by you, for you.
We open this time with a short story with no explanation. It was sent in for us by Brian Fowler, who lives in the great state of New York. He has titled his story, "The Music Never Stops." Hello, Ron. Never miss the show. So for the past few nights I've been hearing music. I can't tell what kind of music exactly, but it sounds like a mixture between jazz and classical. The scariest incident happened a few nights ago when I was out in my living room in darkness talking to one of my buddies over Discord. Just texting, no voice chat. Then I heard the music come for the second time that week. I got up and was more curious than scared and went into the dining room. Now I thought originally, okay, my girlfriend's still in bed, it's 4 a.m. and maybe she's up, Snapchatting or something. As soon as I went into the dining room, it shifted and sounded like it was coming from the room I just left, the exact opposite way of the dining room. I chased it around for a good solid 5 minutes before it just went away. We're not the type of people to just have radios lying around. We keep one for emergencies only. I still don't know what to make of this, but it still freaks me out. Do you have any idea of what it is? For the record, it is not the neighbors. The closest one is a good 500 feet away. Brian Fowler, New York. Well, Brian, I have no idea what you heard. I did some research on the internet and I found a family in Lockport that said that strange sounds, including music and talk radio, have been coming out of their walls and keeping them up on and off for about 6 years. Now, this might sound like an episode of the popular Netflix show, Stranger Things, but the mysterious sounds they are hearing are real. They captured some of the late-night noise on a phone and sent it to the local TV station. The music was faint, but you could definitely hear it. The family called the Lockport police, who took 2 detailed reports about the bizarre problem. In one, the officer noted that he could hear voices and music. Then the officer said he heard a commercial for the Christian radio station AM 1160. The station sent out an engineer to investigate the transmission. He said, "Gotta be honest with you, I have no idea what is receiving the signal. There is nothing that can explain why you're actually hearing it." The family tore up a wall in their daughter's bedroom to inspect the electrical grounding, but nothing was found and the phenomenon still continues. Okay, Bryant, I doubt that helps you very much, but it might give you a place to start. Thank you for your story. This next story comes from Jessica McCormick. Jessica lives in Edgartown, Massachusetts, and has titled her story, The Train Whistle. Hello, Ron. If I remember right, you love strange stories, and I have one for you. This took place when I was a junior or sophomore in high school. Growing up, I lived in a small farm town that has been around since the early 1800s. There are tons of grave sites and cornfields. One summer evening, my friend and I were riding our bikes down a trail and stumbled upon a gated graveyard that was surrounded by forest. There were no houses or train tracks for quite a few miles. We went in to see if we knew any of the names. The oldest grave dated back to the 1700s, and the youngest was 1920. The names on the grave sites were all similar, so we assumed it was a private family cemetery. As we continued to explore it, I felt uneasy as if I was disturbing the peace of the area. The next thing you know, we hear 3 distinct whistle blows. Like from a child's train whistle that you could buy at a Native American trading post or a knick-knack store in a touristy area. The whistle was coming from the forest, and it kept getting closer to us, always in 3s. After hearing the sound approaching, we hightailed it out of there. We hopped back on our bikes and started back down the trail. The whistle kept following us, and the further away we got, the more intense it became. And by that I mean sounding more and more like a real train. We finally broke out of the trail, and the sounds just stopped. I have no idea what was making those sounds. We were not near any train track or playground for that matter. The only explanation I have was that someone was waiting in the forest for another person to come along to scare them, or it was some ghost child messing around. I'll leave that one up to you. Jessica McCormick, Edgartown, Massachusetts. Well, that is a pretty freaky story. I have a feeling it wasn't anyone waiting around for a joke, but I have no idea what it was. I do know that train sounds are the stuff of great paranormal stories. Thank you, Jessica, for your tale. This story is a long one, but it is one of those stories you just have to hear. It gave me chills as I tried to read it, and it was sent in by Shelby Trask from Florida. For the record, I edited this one a lot for language. 25 years ago, I moved in with my cousin and her roommate, Jose. The house was an old cement block, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, with a large fenced yard. He had 2 German shepherds that lived there and were mostly in the yard. The house was in Claremelle, Florida, in a crummy-packed suburban neighborhood. Nothing special. The rent was cheap, $50 a week, and from what I remember, the house was clean, and since my cousin lived there, I moved in. We all got along well. Everyone worked. We kept pretty much to ourselves and saw each other for a few minutes here and there. I lived there for about 6 months. After these events, I moved out. On a weekend night, we all happened to be off from work. We decided to invite some friends over from the pool hall that we frequented, and Jose invited some friends over that he worked with at the pharmaceutical lab. There were probably 20 people there in total. We played music and did what young people do. Eventually, it got pretty late, and we found ourselves talking about ghosts. We all shared stories. My cousin and I come from a pretty spooky family, so we had some really good ones, and everybody was really into the discussion. However, Jose was quiet throughout and waited until things had quieted down and said, "This house is haunted." My cousin and I shot each other a look and then both laughed because, yeah, sometime Jose's 20-pound cat would meow at the empty hallway. But that was it. He proceeded to tell us that there was a presence in the house, but that it mostly stayed in this little tiny pink wooden shed in the backyard. I had never even looked in there before. He told us that he always kept the curtains in his bedroom closed because his window faces the shed and the door won't stay shut. He has jammed it closed 1,000,000 times and it always pops back open. It creeps him out. He said that he could tell when the entity's in the house because he would wake up feeling depressed. It creeped me out. I didn't like to think that I lived with a presence, and I didn't like the idea that it was hurting my roommate. I am a tough chick, and in my opinion, I was like, "Truffles to that ghost. I'll shut that door, and you won't have to keep your curtains open anymore." I said this all because, in my heart, I really didn't believe that anything was going on in the shed or the house. So I told him that I was going to go outside to inspect the shed and deal with the door. Everyone followed me, and while we were walking around the outside of the house, Jose told me it was a bad idea to mess with the shed. Also, whatever it was, it wanted that door open, and I should leave it alone. We all got out there, and it was exactly like I thought it was going to be. A very worn-down wooden shed that oddly looked like a tiny house. I looked inside. There was a busted lawnmower, some old paint buckets, rusty window screens, and of course, darkness. I looked around outside and found a rusty shovel leaning up against a tree. I took it, walked over to the shed, and kicked the door back into its frame. The door was closed, and I took the handle of the shovel, shoved it through the handle of the shed door, and shoved that into the ground so that it was secure. We all went back inside and talked some more, but it was late. Everyone said their goodbyes. We let the dogs out of their pen into the yard and locked the gate. We made sure the front gate was secured so they wouldn't get out, and then we straightened up the house a little and all went to bed. Sometime around 6 a.m. I woke up and opened my bedroom door. I was still sleepy, but there was a weird sound. It startled me, like fingernails scraping against something coarse. I fully opened the door, and that dang rusty shovel fell through the doorway and hit me. I can't even put into words how I felt at that very moment. The shovel had been standing against my bedroom door. There was a tiny bit of dirt where the tip had been sitting. I rushed through the house to the side door, which was locked, and then out into the backyard. The shed door was wide open. I felt like I couldn't breathe, and I ran back into the house. I immediately pounded on both Jose and my cousin's bedroom doors. I was terrified and angry. I knew, absolutely knew, that one of them had done this. However, after seeing their reactions, I promise you, neither of them did it. Jose literally wanted to weep. He begged me to tell him I was lying. He begged my cousin to admit that she had done it. When neither of us would take responsibility, he went to the store and got a bunch of candles, produced a rosary, and started to pray, or whatever it was. My Spanish wasn't even close to fluent enough to keep up with his pleas. My cousin, on the other hand, was just ticked off. She was ready to fight me and was adamant that I was pulling a prank. When I knew that neither of them had done it, I was literally terrified. There was no way that someone got into the yard, past the dogs, got the shed door open, and then got into the house. I didn't sleep there again. Every moment spent there after that was beyond intense. We all kind of stopped talking to each other, and Jose and my cousin ended up in a terrible argument. She moved out within a week. It took me 2 weeks to find another place to live, and I never went back. Shelby Trask, Florida. That is a story. I have nothing to say other than thank you for sharing that with us. It truly was amazing. Well, that's it for this time. If you have a story that you would like to share, like Shelby did, head to the main website at ronsamazingstories.com and click on the Story Submission banner. Leave your story, give it a title, and tell me where you're from. I'll read it if I can. Our featured story comes from the classic OTR series, Lights Out. We are about to take a trip to the moon and back, but not a happy one. This story is a real departure for the folks at Lights Out. The creators, in this case Arch Obler, rarely did science fiction. My thought is they should have done a whole lot more of them. This story shows just how talented the production crew of Lights Out was. Our story is titled Rocket Ship, and it first aired on July 28, 1947.
Lights out, everybody. It is later than you think.
Lights Out brings you stories of the supernatural and the supernormal, dramatizing the fantasies and the mysteries of the unknown. We tell you this frankly, so if you wish to avoid the excitement and tension of these imaginative plays, we urge you calmly, but sincerely, to turn off your radio now.
Prophecy is an easy thing, for rarely is the prophet brought to judgment. Tonight I bring you a false prophecy. A play set at this hour, yes, 1 minute after 10 Eastern Peacetime, but the years have moved onward to the number of 55. The place of our story is a great rocket speeding away from the moon. Yes, away, for the first trip to the moon has finally taken place, and a triumphant airship is now rapidly returning to the Mother Earth. Here, then, is a story about a tomorrow 55 years hence, September 20th in the year of our Lord 2000, on board a rocket ship. A play that is, I sincerely hope, a very false prophecy.
The sky is sure the limit, our new century's begun. We're floating on our plastic boats, we're flying through the air. The world is all our playground, we haven't got a care. Oh, I'm glad to be alive, boys, I'm glad to be alive. I'm riding on a rocket train, and soon I will arrive. Oh, I'm glad to be alive, boys, I'm glad to be alive. I'm riding on a rocket train, and soon I will arrive.
Hi, Doc, how about joining us?
Yes, Doctor. Don't you think it's about time we had a little celebration?
There's a great deal of work to be done. Work's over, Doctor. 24 hours more and we're back.
Yes, Doctor. We'll be back. We've done it. Complete.
In 24 hours. If you're worried about our landing, I'm not. You worried, Reynolds?
No, sir. Everything's in perfect order.
Sure, Doc. There's going to be a round trip. Anyway, there's 24 hours before we have to worry about that.
Yes, Doctor. It's a time for celebration. Oh, I'm glad to be alive, boys. I'm glad to be alive. I'm riding on a rocket train, and soon I will arrive.
Reynolds.
Oh,
Major Reynolds. Are you men out of your minds? You, Major Russell. Reynolds is still a boy, but you're a mature man. Please act maturely.
Oh, but Doctor...
I'll grant you that our adventure has gone well.
Well is right. We've been to the moon.
My congratulations, Reynolds.
Thank you, Major, thank you. I'll put the medal on my other chest.
Will you men listen to me? We're 48,000 miles from the Earth.
And headed right for it.
We're not there yet.
Doc, pardon the expression, but you're a gloomy Joe.
I am a realist.
But, Doctor, the possibilities of anything going wrong are remote. Surely we're entitled to relax a little and relish the fact of what we've done.
Yeah, we've done it, Doc. Even if we never get back, we've done it. We've been to the moon, and it'll always be there on the books.
I'm not interested in becoming an historical fact, Major Russell. The data we've collected, that's my only interest. May I ask you and Reynolds to get back to your post?
Oh, but everything's going like clockwork. Look at the gauges.
But we are out of radio contact with the Earth.
Yes, sir. But we are on course. Doc, what is wrong?
Wrong? What should be wrong?
No, the kid's right, Doc. Ever since we made the circle and started back, all these days you've been acting as if we didn't make it. We've gone 243,000 miles, and we're three-quarters of the way back, and we're in, Doc. We're in. So what's the matter with you?
How old were you, Major, when the Second World War ended?
Oh, about 5. What's that got to do
And
with
you, Reynolds, you weren't even born.
No, sir.
I was 21 on that day in New Mexico when they set off the first chain reaction. 21.
Doc, you mean to say you were in at the beginning of it?
Well, of course he was. Dr. Chamberlain was one of the original research men in the atomic bomb project back in 45. The only one of them alive today.
Well, what do you know? So that's why you wanted to make this trip, Doc. I mean, you...
Yes, Major. You wanted it as a substitution for what you missed as a boy, the excitement and glory of war.
Oh, now, Doc...
It's true, and Reynolds here is young and idealistic, and the scientific wonder of it was what he wanted. And I was there at the birth of an era. Now atomic power is driving me into space, back to the Earth where it all began. And I'm thinking...
Yeah, Doc?
It's not pertinent to any of this. We have no time to discuss our emotions. There's work to be done.
23,486.
Airspeed 23,486.
Interior temperature, 68.2.
Interior temperature 68.2.
Well, that's it.
Yes?
Any radio contact, Reynolds?
No, sir.
How about that, Doc?
Unfortunate, but not very vital. We're definitely on course.
How much longer will it be, Doc?
10 hours. At the most, 10 hours.
In the middle of LaGuardia Field. That's where I'd like to land.
I hope not.
Texas. Isn't that it?
Sure. We'll hit the flats right on the nose.
If the auxiliary jets work.
They worked on the moon. They'll work on landing. We're the good luck boys, Doc. We can't miss.
You have the optimism of a 16-year-old. Reynolds, you'd better get back to your radio. Try phone contact.
Yes, sir.
Major, check the jet temperatures.
Right jet, 1580.
Right jet, 1580.
Left jet, 1583.
Left jet, 1583.
Speed, 24,832.
Speed, 24,832.
XR1 calling CQ. XR1 calling CQ. Hello? XR1 calling CQ. XR1 calling CQ. Hello?
Any luck?
No, sir.
Put your transmitter back on automatic.
Yes, sir.
Why do you laugh, Major?
I was just thinking about how many millions of telescopes are turned in our direction.
Yes?
What you said a few hours ago. I mean, about my wanting the excitement and adventure. That's true, you know. I'm 60 years old, and I guess I just lived for this chance. The Army hadn't okayed my going. Well, here I am. Once we land, I'll admit frankly I'm going to cash in on every bit of it and have myself a time. You know something? I get the feeling kind of depressed when I think it'll soon be over. Well, there's no reason for depression, is there?
I couldn't answer that.
Why not?
You've been wondering, undoubtedly, why, ever since we left the moon, I've been acting strangely.
That's right.
I've never believed in predestination, and yet there's been sort of a motivation of fate in my life. At 21, I was part of that research team trying to adapt atomic power to military purposes. When that first bomb went off over the New Mexico desert, a newspaper man repeated the words, "What hath God wrought?" And no one quite knew. I've been waiting 55 years for the answer. I think I found it a few hours ago on the moon. And it's an answer full of horror. Close the oxygen valve. That's why you're yawning.
Oh, yes, sir. 2 points?
2 points.
Oh, the Major's sure sleeping.
Yes.
It's only a few more hours, isn't it?
Yes.
Will we have to put on our compression suits the way we did on the takeoff?
Yes, of course.
Doctor, may I ask you something?
Yes?
Before, you spoke of finding an answer on the moon. And then you didn't say any more. Well, I've been thinking about it. I was wondering if it was something that the Major couldn't understand. And that's why you didn't speak of it further.
And now you want to know?
Yes, sir. I haven't lived anywhere as long as you two have, but my life has been built around atomic power. My dad, he was one of your men. Ever since I was a child, becoming a physicist like Dad was and you are, and Dr. Oppenheimer and all the rest, why, that was it. Now, all of a sudden, the way you spoke before, as if all our research has been criminal. Do you mean that?
Collision. Radar. Get at it.
What's the matter? What's the matter?
Object approaching.
Where?
15 degrees west. There it is.
Meteorite. It's a meteorite. It's all...
That was the closest.
Oh, it was indeed.
Be sardonic indeed to collide with a meteorite at this point in our journey.
I use a stronger word than sardonic, Doctor.
Yeah, like faithful.
It's all clear.
Well, I better get back to
No,
my...
Reynolds, you asked me a question before, and I want to answer it. You too, Major Russell. I want you to hear this.
Sure.
Reynolds overheard what I said to you, that I'd found the answer to a very old question on the moon. He said that he felt that somehow I thought all of the research on atomic power had been criminal. No, young man, I don't believe that. Not at all. Criminal to know more about a way of nature? No. The answer I found was something else. I hadn't even an answer, perhaps only a theory. When we came within 100 miles of the moon and then began to deaccelerate, to turn back, what did we see through the observation ports?
Well, Doc, we saw...
No, please, let me tell you what I saw. The craters of the moon. Great, gigantic craters, and as we came closer and closer, the look of them was so familiar. Not because I had seen them through telescopes and in photographs, but for some reason that I couldn't quite understand. Craters of the moon, and suddenly, at the very moment when we'd come as close as we dared and our ship swung in an orbit to return, suddenly I knew. It was a memory of another crater I had seen 55 years before in New Mexico from an observation plane high over the ground a few hours after the first atomic bomb had lit the sky with a new sun. Yes. The crater in the crust of the Earth that bomb had left was the same as the craters of the moon. Do you understand? The crater our bomb had left on the Earth was the same as the craters on the moon.
So what? I don't get it.
Yes, Doctor. What are you getting at? Why, the crater in that desert was 1,000th of the size of the ones you're talking about.
I suddenly began to think. Was it not possible that the moon had gone through the same evolutionary processes as our Earth before our Earth? Yes. Wasn't it possible that men had come into being on the moon, developed their own civilization, had known scientific progress, even as we have, but long before we Earthmen had known it?
Say, Doc.
You do understand. These men of the moon had discovered the secret of atomic power long before we did, and then had used it to blast and to tear each other. Yes. And the craters on the moon, that terrible devastation, was the record of the destruction of their civilization. A final war which had burned up the very atmosphere and left the moon a dead planet circling endlessly through an airless sky.
All right, Doctor. Presuming your theory is correct that the moon men had started through a war, a chain atomic reaction that they couldn't stop, well, what of it? It indicates that they were fools.
Yeah, that's it. Fools.
Are we any wiser?
Airspeed 2482.
You'd better cut it down.
Right, how much?
About 15%.
Right.
You get anything, Reynolds?
No, sir.
Would you come here a moment?
Yes, sir.
Will you help me with this port covering?
Yes, sir.
Here, there.
All right. Oh, hey, try to take a look, huh?
Yes, that's it. There she is.
Mama Earth.
Reynolds, the cameras?
Yes, sir. How much should I run, Doctor?
Put it on automatic exposure.
Yes, sir.
6 more hours, eh, Doctor?
Or less.
Sure we haven't made a mistake and headed for Venus.
What are you...
That was just a bad joke, Doc. No, there's no two ways about it. The outline of the continents, we can't make any mistake about that being our home address. I wonder how much they can see of us. What are we, 6,000, 7,000 miles out? You know, this reminds me of the time about 25 years ago. The Army sent me up to 1,000 miles to take observation photographs. Well, you remember how the atomic reaction motors were then. We got up about 500 feet. And
Major.
What?
Look down. Look.
What? Well, I don't see anything. Look, I tell you. Reynolds, come here.
What's the matter? Something wrong?
Well, the doctor says there's...
Reynolds, look. Do you see?
Yes. What is it?
I see it, too. Bright lights going on and off. What's going on down there?
Doctor, are they signaling us? Are they signaling?
It's 6,000 miles. Why? Why should they?
That's right. There's no such plan.
Look at it. It is lights going on and off.
But they're all from one area.
Can you make out where?
North America.
Then they are signals. The candle in the window.
Your own question. At 6,000 miles?
Wait a minute.
Are they explosions?
Explosions? Major Doctor, is that it? Are they explosions?
I don't know.
CQ, CQ, hello, 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 CQ, CQ. Oh, I'm sorry, Doctor, I can't raise any.
Doc, come here.
Yes, what?
Look, the closer we get, they are explosions.
3 more hours, we'll know.
I want to know now. Reynolds, what's the matter with you? Why can't you make radio contact?
I'm doing everything I can.
Major.
Doc, what is...
Craters. Look. Craters.
Craters? At this altitude, you couldn't possibly...
After each flash, I do see them.
Okay. What does it mean? Well, what are you looking at me like that for? What does it mean?
Dr. Major, something coming through.
Oh, well, it's about time.
I can only hear it faintly.
What?
Please, let me listen. United States. What?
Reynolds, what is it?
Tell us.
Boys, I couldn't quite make out. He said...
Said what?
Tell us.
War. He said war. Blasting the United States off the face of the earth.
Blasting?
It's a joke, isn't it? Isn't it?
What are they sending now? What now?
It began an hour ago. No warning. Projectiles radio controlled. Point of origin unknown. Oh, it stopped again, the transmission.
It's enough. Where's the International Police Force? What's being done about it? Doctor, did you hear it was an attack without warning? Who could it be? What's the idea?
The explosions are increasing in frequency.
Reynolds, is there anything more coming through?
No, nothing. Yes, they started transmission again.
All right, let's have it quick.
Some station in Midwest. I can't get the call letters.
Who cares?
He says it's hell. Ground shaking. No bombs landed near, but air reconnaissance. It's so garbled I can hardly make out.
Well?
It started an hour ago. Everything burning. Oh, it stopped again. There's nothing.
Doctor, in heaven's name, what do you think it's all about? Stop staring out of the window and talk to me.
What are they doing?
What do you mean, what are they doing? They're bombing us, blasting us. It's war, but who? We've got to find out. Reynolds, find out who.
What? It's no use. There's no transmission.
Doctor, those bombs, where are they coming from? Can't you tell by the trajectory?
At this distance? And what difference does the face of the enemy make? It's happening, that's all.
Smashed them. I always said we should have smashed them. Exterminated them 50 years ago.
Oh, they were so peaceful for so many years. And
the flashes are increasing in frequency.
Reynolds, get on that radio.
I'll try again.
I've got to know who, the devils. We had agreements with everyone, the international... Devils, all of them. Call them devils, I don't even know who they are. Reynolds! You get anything?
No, I don't.
Doctor, faster. Let's get down there faster. Let's open it up.
You know better than that. We're entering atmosphere. Increased speed, and we burn up like a meteorite.
But I'm an army man. All my life I've been
coming
trained.
through.
What?
The bombs. Nothing can. I can hardly make it out.
Keep at it.
Panic. Paratroopers.
Who?
Last message from United States of... It's ended. There is no more.
We'd only get down there faster.
Only 500 more miles.
Look at it down there. Our Air Force, protective measures. What happened to them?
What happened?
Doctor, why don't you say something? We'll just sit there for hours watching. This isn't a scientific experiment going on down there. They're blasting us to pieces. Us! Your atomic bomb, the great secret. Hold it over the world and have peace forever. You said that. Yes, you. I was a kid then. I heard you say it over the radio when they gave you a medal. Hold it over the world and have peace forever. Well, what do you got to say now?
We had a wonderful 55 years.
What?
Everybody had a wonderful time.
Reynolds, what's the matter with him? He's gone.
No. Let him finish.
First, we hung the criminals 55 years ago. And as soon as their bodies stopped swinging, we left the crowd and each went back to his own house and shut the door.
You said the peace would hold forever.
I said it because I thought that when the secret was put away, the people of the world would remember the terror. I said to myself, now, surely now that they've seen the possibility of the disintegration of their Earth, they'll be drawn together once again into the family of men as it must have been in the beginning. I forgot what years could do. I forgot how quickly forgetfulness comes. I forgot that in only a few years, Hiroshima and Nagasaki would be only yesterday's sensations for a nation eager for sensations for today. You keep asking me who's sending those bombs against us. Who? I tell you, we're sending them against ourselves. Yes. Because had we made our way of life something more than a confused dream of shiny machines and happy endings, those bombs of hatred and revenge would not be flying at us. I said the peace would hold forever because I thought that out of that war at last men had learned that there was no defense against hatred and revenge, but the defense of education for the unity of people. It was a race, gentlemen, against time. And we wasted our last 55 years running backwards on a track of chromium and plastics. And so we've lost. Forever.
No. We've never lost.
Look, the blasts are increasing in frequency. There's nothing left. Nothing.
We'll start someplace else. We'll build...
Doctor, look. The color of the blast.
Oh, dear God.
What?
Doctor, it's nitrogen, isn't it?
Nitrogen? What?
The fools, the everlasting fools, I warned.
The blast. More and more.
They started something they couldn't end. The color of the blast, they've set off hydrogen atoms.
I don't know what you...
We used uranium, plutonium, and when the initial blast was over, that was all. But hydrogen, that's part of life. One reaction sets off the other like setting off an endless chain until... Look down there.
Blast. Faster and faster.
They're spreading.
The fools. God help the fools. God help the fools.
It happened.
The sheet of flame. Around the earth. Doctor, tell me, what is it? What was it? Tell me.
It burned up all the atmosphere.
Burned up. Reynolds, what does he mean?
The chain reaction burned up all the air.
Move.
Major, the left jet.
It's all right. All right. Where are we going? Can we go down there?
There's no air, no life. The moon, the earth, the same.
How much fuel?
There's the gauge.
2, 3 hours?
Yes, I think that's right. Isn't it, Major?
Yeah. What do we do?
You ask that question now? The Major no longer asks it. Do you know the answer, Major?
Sure. We'll circle around. Then we'll crash.
No. No, it'll be all right, my boy. My words again. Have peace forever.
Not a very hopeful story. However, it was so very well made. One thing to keep in mind while you reflect on this one is that it was released in July of 1946. World War II had just ended a few short months before, and the Cold War really wouldn't get going for another year. The term Cold War was first used in the United States by American financier and presidential advisor Bernard Bach. He talked about it in a speech at the State House in Columbia, South Carolina, in 1947. This would kick off 44 years of distrust and fear of a nuclear war. So how did that story make you feel? My reaction is this. This story was way ahead of its time. Lights Out is an American old-time radio program devoted mostly to horror and the supernatural. It was created by Willis Cooper and then eventually taken over by Arch Obler. Versions of Lights Out aired on different networks at various times from 1934 to the summer of 1947. The series eventually made the transition to television. Lights Out was one of the earliest radio horror programs, predating both Suspense and The Inner Sanctum. How about that? Okay, that was episode number 501, and we begin our next 100. This time, I want to thank Bryant Fowler, Jessica McCormick, and Shelby Trask for lending us their stories. So very cool. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button makes us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.